For months, the world has been waiting in silence. Rumors, whispers, half-truths, all swirling around the same man, Can Yaman. The Turkish star who conquered millions of hearts from Istanbul to Rome had disappeared behind a wall of mystery. He refused interviews, avoided red carpets, and every photo, every brief appearance only raised more questions. Fans wondered, what really happened? Why did he stop talking? But now, he's finally ready to speak. When the interview began, the air was thick with tension. Cameras rolled, the lights dimmed slightly, and for a long moment, Can just sat there, silent, thoughtful, his hands clasped together. You could see it in his eyes. This wasn't going to be another rehearsed statement or a PR-safe conversation. This was different. This was the truth. He took a deep breath and said quietly, "I owe people answers, and I owe myself honesty." That single sentence changed the energy in the room. The interviewer leaned forward, the team behind the cameras froze. Because everyone knew, the moment the silence broke, nothing would ever be the same again. For years, the world had watched Can Yaman's rise, from a promising young actor in Turkish TV to an international sensation. His on-screen chemistry with Demet Özdemir had set entire social media platforms on fire. Their series wasn't just a hit, it became a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of passion and authenticity. Fans shipped them, believed in them, and for a while, maybe they even believed in each other. Then, without warning, everything shattered. Distance. Coldness. Rumors of arguments. His sudden move to Italy. And Demet's quiet tears during interviews that never mentioned his name but always felt like a whisper directed at him. Now, sitting under those studio lights, Can knew there was no going back. The truth had to be told, about his silence, about the woman everyone still links to his name, and about what fame really does to the heart. He began softly, "When you live in the spotlight, people think they know you. They think they own your story. But the truth is, most of what they know is fiction." The words hung in the air. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't acting. For the first time in a long time, it was just Can, the man behind the myth. And then he said something no one expected. It wasn't just about love. It was about survival. The interviewer blinked. "Survival?" she repeated. Can nodded, his voice calm but trembling slightly. "Sometimes silence is the only way to protect what's left of your soul." That was the moment everyone in the room realized, this confession would go far beyond gossip or scandal. It would reveal the emotional price of being adored, misunderstood, and judged by millions. Because Can Yaman wasn't just breaking his silence. He was reclaiming his story. The silence he had kept for so long wasn't just about protecting his privacy, it was about protecting someone else. As the interviewer leaned closer, sensing that something far more personal was coming, Can's voice softened again. "People always said I changed after fame," he began. "But fame doesn't change you, it exposes who you really are, and it tests who can survive next to you." There was a pause, the kind that makes a heartbeat sound like thunder. Everyone in the studio knew who he was talking about, but no one dared to say her name. The tension was electric, invisible but undeniable. The world had watched their love story unfold in front of cameras, through 1,000 romantic scenes, 1,000 smiles that looked too real to be acting. It was the kind of chemistry directors dream of, but fans saw something more. They saw two souls connecting. And maybe, for a moment, they were right. Can lowered his eyes, his jaw tightening. "When we were filming, I forgot about the cameras sometimes. I forgot where I was. There were moments when the emotions were too real, and when the camera stopped rolling, that line between fiction and reality disappeared." He didn't need to say her name. Everyone knew he meant Demet Özdemir. The interviewer hesitated, then asked quietly, "So, was it real?" Can looked up, his gaze steady, honest, wounded. "It was," he said. "But not in the way people imagine. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was something fragile, confusing, and beautiful in its own painful way." The words carried weight. Not the easy confession fans expected, but something deeper, more human. He continued, "We were both young. We were both trying to understand this world that suddenly wanted a piece of us. Every gesture, every look, every smile, people read into it. But behind the scenes, we were just two people trying to keep our balance while the ground kept shaking beneath us." The interviewer leaned forward. "And when it ended?" Can gave a faint, almost invisible smile, the kind that hides a storm. "When it ended, I thought silence would help. That if I didn't speak, things would settle, that the noise would fade. But the silence only made the voices louder. Everyone started creating their own version of the truth. And suddenly, I wasn't living my story anymore, I was living theirs." He sighed deeply. For a moment, it looked like he might stop talking again. But then, as if deciding that he had hidden long enough, he added quietly, "There are things I never said, because some truths can destroy the little piece you have left." The room froze. His eyes glistened, not quite tears, but close enough to reveal that what he was saying wasn't scripted. Can Yaman was finally peeling back the layers of the story everyone thought they knew. This wasn't about gossip anymore. It was about a man who had loved, lost, and carried that silence like a wound he couldn't show. And for the first time, the world began to realize. Maybe the real tragedy wasn't the breakup, but the things left unsaid. When the cameras cut, when the lights of the set went off, everything was different. No one saw those moments, the quiet minutes between takes, the deep breaths before a scene that felt too real, or the silence after a long day when they both stayed longer than they needed to. Ken remembered that night clearly, the night everything changed. It was the last day of shooting, and something in the air already felt like goodbye. He sat on the edge of the dressing room sofa, still wearing his costume, lost in thought. The sound of the studio crew packing up echoed through the halls, but in his mind, there was only one thought: would this connection survive outside the screen? And then, there she was, Demet, standing at the doorway. No makeup, no cameras, just her, raw and real. She smiled faintly, that same smile that had once stopped his heart midline. "Congratulations," she said softly. "We did it." He smiled back, but it wasn't the smile of celebration, it was the kind you give when you know something beautiful is ending. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We did." There was a pause. The kind of pause where both people know what they want to say, but neither dares to break the moment. She walked closer. "People will never stop talking, you know," she whispered. "About us. About what this was." Ken nodded slowly. "Let them talk. We know what it was." For a second, it felt like time stopped. The tension between them was heavy, not angry, but filled with all the things they'd never said. And then Demet asked, almost in a whisper, "Do you ever regret it?" That question cut deeper than she realized. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, couldn't find the right words. "No," he finally said. "Never. I just wish we'd had a world that didn't force us to hide everything real." Her eyes glistened. She wanted to say something, but all she managed was a quiet nod. They both knew that from that night on, things would never be the same. Fame had stolen their privacy, their peace, maybe even their chance. Ken continued in the interview, his voice distant, as if replaying that moment in his mind. "We promised to protect what we had, but sometimes love gets lost between rumors and headlines. It becomes something you can't recognize anymore." The interviewer, visibly moved, asked, "So that was the last time you spoke to her?" Ken hesitated. His hand tightened around the glass of water on the table. "No," he said. "There was one more time. One call. I never returned." The audience gasped. For the first time, he was admitting there had been something unfinished, something still haunting him. He looked straight into the camera, and for a moment, it felt like he was speaking directly to her. Sometimes, the silence between two people says more than 1,000 words ever could. That line became the headline of every news outlet within hours. But what no one knew, what only Ken knew, was the truth behind that unreturned call, the one that could have changed everything. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on a point far beyond the room. The lights, the cameras, the microphones, none of it seemed to matter anymore. He was no longer the celebrity giving an interview, he was a man confronting a ghost from his past. "It was late," he began. "I remember it clearly. My phone buzzed, her name appeared on the screen, and I froze." The interviewer didn't interrupt. She just listened. The entire studio fell silent, not a sound, not even a breath from the crew. We hadn't spoken for weeks. Everything had gone quiet between us. But that night, something told me she wasn't calling for publicity or closure. It was something deeper. He looked down, exhaling slowly. And yet, I didn't answer. There it was, the truth he'd buried for so long. The unreturned call that haunted him every night since. He continued, voice trembling slightly, "I don't even know why I didn't pick up. Maybe it was pride. Maybe fear. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to hear her voice again, because I knew that if I did, I'd never be able to let go." That single sentence sent chills through everyone listening. The interviewer asked carefully, "Did she ever call again?" He shook his head. "No. That was it. That was the last time she reached out." His words hit like thunder. For years, fans had speculated about what tore them apart. Jealousy, fame, distance, new relationships, but no one had ever imagined that everything might have changed with just one call unanswered. Can's gaze hardened, then softened again, as though reliving the regret in real time. "The next morning, I saw the message she left. Just one line." He paused. His throat tightened. She wrote, "I just wanted to say goodbye properly." The studio went silent. Even the interviewer looked down, moved by the pain in his voice. Can's eyes glistened, but he didn't wipe them. He didn't need to, that moment of vulnerability said everything. "It's strange," he whispered. "You can have all the fame in the world, but sometimes, it's the one person you lose that makes you feel completely invisible." He looked up again, speaking not as a star, but as a man broken by his own silence. "People think being strong means saying nothing. But I've learned, silence can destroy more than words ever could." The interviewer whispered, "If she's watching this now, what would you say to her?" He swallowed hard, looked directly into the camera, and said quietly, "I'd tell her I heard her call, even if I didn't answer." It was raw, devastating, and painfully real. Every viewer watching felt it, the kind of emotion that can't be faked, the kind that only comes from something once deeply loved and lost. That call, that single unanswered call, became the symbol of everything that went wrong between them. And as Can sat there, his voice cracking under the weight of years of regret, the truth was clear: he hadn't stayed silent to protect himself, he had stayed silent because he never stopped caring. After that night, everything changed. The phone never rang again, and silence became his only companion. It followed him through airports, hotel rooms, film sets, even the red carpets that once felt like home. The applause of thousands couldn't drown the echo of the one voice he didn't answer. Can's life moved on, or at least, that's what everyone thought. He took on new roles, new countries, new languages, but deep down, part of him stayed frozen in that moment, staring at a phone that would never light up again. He told the interviewer softly, "People think time heals everything. It doesn't. It just teaches you to live with the ache." That confession pierced through every viewer's heart. The man who once seemed untouchable, powerful, adored by millions, now looked human, fragile, honest, broken, but free. Then, for the first time, he spoke openly about Demet, not as a co-star, not as a rumor, but as the person who changed everything. "Demet will always be special to me," he said, his eyes glistening. "Not because of what people saw on screen, but because of who she was when no one was watching. She was pure light, and I was too proud to admit how much that light meant to me until it was gone." The interviewer, visibly emotional, whispered, "Would you change anything if you could go back?" Can smiled faintly, a sad but peaceful smile. "Maybe I wouldn't change the story," he said. but I'd answer that call. That one line spread across social media within minutes. Fans around the world reposted it, cried over it, debated it, because for the first time, there were no scripts, no tabloids, no filters. Just a man speaking from the deepest part of his soul. He looked straight into the camera once more and added, "We spend our lives searching for someone who sees us completely. And when you find that person, don't ever let silence be your answer." The lights dimmed. The interview ended. But the silence that followed wasn't the heavy kind anymore, it was peaceful. It felt like release. When he stood up to leave, he didn't rush. He just placed his phone on the table, as if leaving behind the ghost of that one missed call, and walked toward the door. The camera caught a final shot, his silhouette disappearing into the soft light of the hallway, the same way he had walked away years ago, this time not running from the past, but finally making peace with it. And outside the studio, as the world reacted with shock, tears, and admiration, Can Yaman smiled for the first time in a long while, not for the cameras, not for the fans, but for himself. Because after all the rumors, the pain, and the silence, he had finally done what he couldn't that night. He had answered. Sometimes, the loudest confession is the silence you finally decide to break.